Good evening. Today is Tuesday, April 28th. This is 6 p.m. This is the Olentangy Local Schools Board of Education. This is a special meeting, a work session to discuss to do some planning for the superintendent search. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order. Could Mr. Curran, you please call the roll?
Mr. Bartz?
Here.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. White?
I have not heard from Mr. White.
Mr. O'Brien?
I am here. That, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
You second.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
It didn't say it in my ears.
Dave got it in. He
Yeah.
seconded. All right, no discussion. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Okay, so our only agenda item is to do planning for the superintendent search. So I'd ask Ms. Cheryl Ryan to join us from the Ohio School Board Association.
Okay.
She's representing the firm that will be assisting us in the search process.
Better to sit up here.
You can sit up here, whatever's more comfortable.
Because there's a mic
Desk
here
space.
and
Yeah.
you'll be on camera and
Thank you. I'll give you a set of materials just to get started. Do you mind passing?
I don't know.
There is a set here for Mr. White as well.
We'll make sure he gets it.
Okay. Dr. Lucas is taller than I am.
I think they reset everything.
No comment.
Okay, so it's my pleasure to be with you here today, and I'm really looking forward to getting started with you on your superintendent search. If calls to the office are any indication, recruiting is well underway.
Good.
As you know, as soon as you signed a contract, it did go up on the OSBA website, and we've shot it out to member websites across the country. So I am getting calls at this point, mostly regionally, but good calls from quite highly qualified candidates. So before we even get starting, I think there are some really good signs. The first thing I want to do tonight, as you'll see on your agenda that I prepared, is to talk to you about the timeline. Because obviously it's probably fairly apparent to all of you that many districts who are searching for superintendents are making appointments or have already made appointments. So in some ways, it may feel like you're behind the 8 ball, and in other ways, I think you're not at all. And so I wanted to start with the timeline. So I did put a timeline in the original proposal that OSBA provided to you, but this one is basically working off real dates now. And what I've done here that's a little different is the planning meeting with the consultant, me, is tonight. I did bring a draft of the brochure, so I think we're ahead of the game there. I would really like to fast track that and get that out just as soon as humanly possible. And I've designed a relatively short recruiting period. I think, and we can have some discussion about this, but my feeling is that the position is already fairly well known throughout the state and certainly regionally. I think that you're going to draw a fairly special class of superintendent candidate, and I think the people in that class are going to know about this opening already. And because it's been on the OSBA website about 3 weeks, I think that we can shorten the recruiting period a little bit. If you agree to that, the rest of the timeline falls out with a closing date of May 27th and screening shortly after that. I wrote down that I would be back with you on Wednesday, June 3rd for you to select the candidates you would like to interview. Again, all of these dates are up for discussion and debate. And I'm open to changing anything that doesn't feel good to the 5 of you. I do want to leave time between the first and second round for reference checking and for your candidates to take our Achiever Leadership Assessment. If we can stay very tight to a time calendar and stay on track, I have you appointing your superintendent candidate towards the end of June. So with that, I would just ask for your discussion on the dates I've detailed.
I have a question, but I think it's mostly for Kevin, and the rest of the board is, so on the brochure, if we can work through that tonight, is there anything that keeps us from approving that on our meeting on Thursday of this week?
We don't even have to take, we
Yeah,
don't
you
even
don't
have
have to
to
really
take a
vote.
vote.
Okay, then,
This is just a working document. We could
That's
just
fine.
approve it via,
We can-
just because it, I mean, if we can cut 3-4 days out of that
Yeah.
process before it gets out.
The one thing I want to say about the brochure, there's an additional fee of that. I do printing and mailing every single day of my job. That is a good price.
yeah.
$1,800 for printing and mailing, or, postage is what kills you anymore. And I print stuff daily, and in my opinion, I want to make sure that we do everything that we can to get those well-qualified candidates. Even though we're in the world of technology, I don't think we can just rely on a website posting. I want to make sure that we've used all of our avenues.
No, I agree. I think, I know we used the brochure with Brian. I think it was successful and garnered interest, and so I think it's a useful tool.
Is there any advantage to do we have a bulk mail permit as a district?
They do.
We
You
do.
have one, okay.
That's how they can get it. Mhm.
And we'll also be attaching it to, letters
Yeah, you
and
use it as a
emails
PDF
and
out.
doing lots of things.
So it's
but-
not just for mail.
Right.
There's multiple uses.
Yes, so I guess to Roger's point, if we could get alignment on that quickly, we can actually extend the recruiting period on the front end versus the back end.
Right.
Yeah, I
And
think that
hold
was,
the
yeah.
27th date. So I like that.
Okay.
Could you spend about focus groups in the districts, kind of what you had in
Sure.
mind there?
Your contract calls for focus groups in the district. And normally, that is my being in a district for a full day. Because you're so close to the office, if it doesn't work to do it all in one day, I can certainly be flexible. But what I would want to talk to you when we get to that part in the agenda this evening is a little bit about how you all see those groups kind of falling out demographically. So it works best to have focus groups with what I call homogeneous groups.
Oh.
So
PTO.
staff,
Got it.
boosters, administrators. Some districts will split out teaching staff into a primary, middle grades, secondary kind of classification. I always like to offer at least one opportunity, usually in the early evening, for anybody in the district, particularly community members at large, to come give their feedback. So we can do, in some districts, frankly, it's 2 focus groups, and in some districts, it's 8. So we can talk about how you see the important groups of people. And then normally, Brian, it normally falls between me and a treasurer, or me and a treasurer's assistant, or sometimes the superintendent's administrative assistant, to look at the school calendars and determine which dates are best. Then I provide invitations, and we push lists out and get groups of people here.
So this would be a series of focus groups over a couple days. But I want to make sure you've got multiple dates on here. These are just choices.
We're
We're not proposing what
yeah.
1, 2, 3. It's 6 focus group
Right.
dates. It's just those are potential dates. It's the same, say, population of focus. Okay.
Exactly. And so these are dates that, I put those dates in there just because they're dates that work with my
Flexibility.
calendar currently. But I'll be certainly as flexible as we need to be.
Yeah, we have a Board of Education on June 25th. So that would fit on the deliberation decision
Okay.
timeline.
Mhm.
We already
June
have
25th
this-
is your regular meeting?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
June 11th and June
And the
25th.
11th that month as well.
The 11th, I
Actually,
think,
the
we're
June 11th,
changed.
that was
That
the
was
retreat.
our board retreat
Yeah, that was the
that we're going to
retreat.
move back.
Okay, so that will move.
And then we go again July 9th. If we,
And, I've allocated, for example, 3 evenings for interviews. I
Oh,
like
yeah.
to normally task boards with no more than 3 interviews
Right.
per evening. So that would mean 9 candidates. You're certainly, we'll play with that. So a lot of this stuff will just have to be flexed as you move through the process and determine what you want.
I like the closing date May 27th, I think
Mhm.
that's fine. And I am available on anytime the week of June 1st so that we can get together with you and sift through the.
That would be a good
all
thing
of
to
the-
check now, is everybody
Yeah.
check your calendars for that week. I think I'm fairly flexible. We could do our internal screening at OSBA probably as early as Thursday, the 28th, if we had to. So whichever night is good for the board to meet with me to receive your report that week, I can try and do.
That's the June 3rd reference?
That's right, that's the reference for June 3rd.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, so anytime that week really is what she's saying.
Yeah, I'm fine that week as well. I'm in town.
Is there any night that's bad for anybody that week?
Friday night.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we just say Wednesday, June 3rd? Is that okay, or do you want to make it
Maybe we'll
sooner?
do
Or
Thursday,
do you want to
'cause
do it
usually we do
Thursday
Thursdays.
because of board meet, because people are used to being here on Thursdays, our community is.
Okay.
Or,
So go
no,
June 4th.
would it be an open meeting?
That would normally be executive session.
Oh, okay. Oh, so Thursday's fine too.
Yeah, either day, 3rd or 4th.
You pick, I'm
The
good.
Thursday would be more consistent, I think.
Okay, Thursday the 4th?
Yep. 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll check with Adam when you get that.
Okay, and then that would give me, if we do start interviews on June 8th, that would give me a couple of days to get your candidates contacted and scheduled and that kind of thing.
Are you suggesting here with your first round interviews, you had mentioned no more than 3 per night, which I agree with, over 3 nights, that you're suggesting there could be 9 candidates for interview or just up to?
What we,
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
what we found the last time, when we went through, when we did this for Dr. Lucas, when we went through the list the last time, there were, I mean, there was a clear distinction between your top 5 and all the rest. So it didn't make sense to bring in more than 5.
I would
I don't
agree.
know what this group will look like. I mean, there will be a clear distinction line, I think.
I think so. I would expect that you're going to have many, whatever that means to you, a dozen or more highly qualified candidates. So the determination will be how the 5 of you feel about where that line that Julie's referring to is. I will tell you that of the searches I've done this year, the fewest candidates a board saw was 5 and the most a board saw was 12. So there really is some variation. You have boards that want to make sure that the right fit, doesn't fall through the cracks, and then there are other boards that can look at the application materials and say, clearly, these 5 are the ones we need to talk to. So we'll just have to have that conversation when the time comes. But I would say an average is probably 7 or 8 first-round interviews.
And that, the number and who would be established on the 4th then? Is that
Yes.
the goal?
Right.
Yep.
And then from the 4th to the 8th, that's enough time to inform candidates and
Get them here?
and
Yes.
they can get into their schedules?
Should you have, the only kind of complication that might occur is if you should have an out-of-state candidate. Let's say we have a candidate in Montana who you really think looks fabulous. We might then want to talk about doing something via Skype or video conference for a first-round interview.
Except, by that time, most of them would be out of school, right?
Except the East Coast schools, sometimes they go longer.
Oh, yeah,
snow
New England
they
schools
have.
will be in late
Yeah.
June, early July.
They're
Yeah.
actually not going to take the summer off.
So we'll just have to see how it works out, but if it works according to plan, and most times it does, this would be okay.
Does anyone have any times they're going to be out of town in June so that we can work around them now?
Actually looks pretty good
Yeah.
for me.
So I'm not gone until the end of June.
I'm good.
Okay.
Should be fine.
Okay, are there any other dates on here that are concerning to you?
I do have a board meeting for the Career Center on the 10th, but I might be able to work around that. So we're in the process of possibly building a new school, so that's a big deal at the Career Center.
Okay, noted.
No, the rest of it looks fine.
Okay,
Good.
well, good. Well, I will finalize the timeline and get you all a final copy.
Let's, unless I'm hitting this too soon, let's talk about the
Okay.
June 22, 23 community meet and greet.
Okay?
Are you going to get to that, or?
Yeah, it's
Sure,
on the-
I'm happy to, yeah, and I would talk about that too when we talk about focus groups, but I'll mention it now since you asked. Second round, so the first round interviews are generally going to be a scripted, fairly cut and dried, quick interview to allow you to meet each of the candidates on the same basis and to compare them as close to one another as possible. The second round interview will be after you've done reference checking, after you've seen the results of the Achiever Leadership Testing, and after you've had a chance to get to know these candidates much more thoroughly, either in person or over the internet or on the paper that they submit. So the second round interviews tend to be much more personal and much more a determination of actual fit with your board, fit with your community, fit with your staff, etc. Some districts choose, boards choose, obviously it's your legal responsibility to appoint your superintendent. Nobody else has any legal authority to make the choice for you. So there are boards that just go all the way through the process, do involve the community with focus groups, but when it comes to interviewing and evaluation, from that point forward, they make the decision totally on their own. And that's a decision that we should talk about, that how you would like to do that. There are some boards that choose to involve the community, at least in terms of a question and answer session with final candidates or a meet and greet, do something that would allow mostly their staff and some community members an opportunity to weigh in objectively about which of the final 2 or 3 they think represents the best fit for Olentangy. Whether you want to do that is certainly up for discussion, but I always put it in a timeline just as an option.
Well, I think it's a good idea, and Julie knows this. She was on the board. I was not on the board, but I chaired the development committee when Dr. Lucas was hired. And we had what I'll refer to as an ad hoc committee. They were invited. They were the chairs of all the schools' boards, committees like the development committee, finance and audit, et cetera. The Teachers Association was represented. I don't remember if the other 2 associations were. Do you remember if they were?
I think we did invite
probably
them. I
were.
know they were invited. I
Okay.
don't remember if
I just don't remember
they
who was there.
participated, but they were invited.
OFK was represented. I don't recall that the Olentangy Education Foundation was there, but I think they ought to be. So OFK, OEF, I think OIAA was. Did they speak for the other booster groups, or should 1 or 2 other booster groups be invited? Was the treasurer there for that ad hoc sit around the table?
I don't remember, but one group that should be there that we didn't have in the past is the diversity committee.
I would agree with that. So there was about 12 people.
Okay.
And because of their roles, they were very tuned into the district. They understand the district. They understand the culture of the district, its history, because they've all gotten to a point where they chaired a committee or have some position similar to that. And I thought that was a very good dialogue. We did it with the final 2 and then the final 1, Dr. Lucas, and we just went around the table for an hour, hour and a half, very informal. And then the board asked for us just to write down our impressions. We didn't vote. There was no vote taken at all. It was just each person's impressions, and then those little note cards were handed over to the board, and then the board did make the final decision, of course.
And you saw each candidate one at a time?
One at a time, again, probably about an hour, maybe a little over,
How many did
not
you
over an hour and a
How
half.
many did you see? Like 1, 2?
We saw 2.
Just 2.
And then when that didn't happen, then we saw Dr. Lucas.
Because, see, we
Okay,
did
that's
2
right.
searches.
The final 2, official final 2 before Dr. Lucas, the board didn't select either one. Well, they actually withdrew their names.
And then you did it again.
And then we did it again.
Got it. Okay.
That's very easy to do. And several times this season, we've done similar things. And I'm happy to set that up for you. A lot of times a board feels like it's an important thing. We have a really nice set of feedback questions that we've developed to ask people like that would come to the round table, so that they have questions to answer, objective, questions to answer, and then that feedback's all given back to the board so that they can use it in their deliberations. So
Yeah.
happy to do that.
I assume there'd be a fair amount of overlap between people in focus groups and the community meet and greet.
Sometimes.
Because I would assume if they provided input in the beginning of what they're looking for, they'd have an opportunity to kind of back test that against what they're seeing.
And I
I
would,
wouldn't say it didn't have to be one-to-one.
Yeah.
At least making sure that that connection's made.
and I think the focus group should be a push and a pull to your question.
Okay.
I think depending on who the group is, sometimes there's an invitation that's just sent out to a wide group, and anybody that's interested from that group can attend. Other times, invitations are clearly made. So you may want to do both. You may want to make sure that people from your finance committee and people from your diversity committee and some of those other groups that you've talked about this evening are definitely, you can say this is an open meeting, but we definitely would love it if somebody from your group would be present. So to answer your
Initial
question.
focus groups?
In the initial focus groups, yeah. So there should be opportunities for both an open door kind of thing. I'm really interested in the superintendent search. I don't have any other connection with the school at this point, but I'd like to be able to come and give my feedback, as well as people that you definitely target.
No, I don't see the meet and greet, ad hoc committee, whatever. I see that being an invited group. I don't see that being an open door public meeting.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah, focus groups would be
Focus
open.
group.
That's,
Right.
And
So
then
that's a
the other,
different
the meet and
approach.
greet would be invite, and you would hope you'd specifically invite folks that were in the focus groups.
So would you add a third day that week then, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th for that third group? Is that what you're saying then from a timeline, or just?
So the focus groups
Oh, would be up.
is just open,
On one of the open days. Okay.
and I would hope that based upon who actually shows up, some of those folks would be invited to the meet and greet.
I would imagine some of them would be invited.
So you just have that connection back.
Well, now
Focus groups.
it's specific. You're actually talking to the person, to the candidate.
Yeah.
And the questions will be specific.
I think the way the calendar could work, if second round interviews actually happen June 17th to the 19th, somewhere in there, depending on how many candidates, again, there are, and then they might be invited back to meet with that roundtable group. If you had, let's just say you had 2 candidates and you did one on each night, it might be if you were inviting the group that you want to do it all on the same night so that you don't obligate people for more than one evening.
Yeah, I think.
So let's say you had 2 finalists and we did, one at 6:30 and one at 8 type thing.
Yeah.
It could be that the board then meets directly after that to do its deliberation so that, you don't have another night out of your calendar. So we can, wait and see who your candidates are and just about how much time we're talking about to solidify
Well, I think
those
we
dates.
started fairly early because I think the board did meet after we were done the same evening. Do you recall that?
Yes. But it doesn't, I only think it happened like that because of scheduling. It
Okay.
doesn't have to happen like that, because then you're putting the board, making them make a decision.
It could be that on the evening that you do second round interviews, let's just say you have 3 candidates and it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You bring each candidate in. It may be that you want to do, a tour of the district. Maybe a couple of you want to have dinner with the candidate. Then you do your second round interview. So, there's lots of things we can talk about as we get closer and know exactly who we're talking about, where they're coming from, how far they have to travel, what their personal situation is, and just exactly how involved you want the interviews to be. But I've noted that you'd like a roundtable, an invitation-only roundtable, that you'd like to draw from people who attended a focus group, 1 or more of the focus groups, and we will shoot for sometime that week of June 22nd.
Now, if just for whatever reason, somebody couldn't attend, let's say, pick OEF. If somebody from OEF could not attend the focus group, I'd still want OEF invited to the
It wouldn't
roundtable.
preclude you from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to make sure it's understood.
Yeah, they'll have to
Yeah.
move their own schedules.
You don't have to do both.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And I don't mind if, like the finance committee chair, if they can't make it to that
Send
closed
someone
meeting,
else.
if they send someone
Sure.
else.
Good.
Gosh, almost any one of those members from
Oh, yeah.
a couple of those committees could well represent their committee. Wouldn't necessarily take the chair to do that.
Great. Okay, any other timeline questions? Okay, well, the second item I wanted to talk about kind of is also the third item, and we don't have to take these in order. What I would like now is if you all could just talk to me about what you're looking for, what the district is facing, what you see as critical experiences the superintendent must bring, whether or not you are warm to things like out-of-state candidates, internal candidates, retire-rehire candidates.
I want to say right
Residency,
now,
all
I
that.
am not for retire-rehire candidates.
Okay,
No.
Same here. How about
Same.
So you can check that one off.
okay.
Um,
Out of state, that's again my opinion, it would have to be a really remarkable candidate. Only because I think the curve to understand Ohio school funding as well as establishing that network down in Columbus in terms of being able to
Yes.
effectively navigate the
We found that very important.
lobbying was critically important. So I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it would have to be a remarkable candidate.
Okay,
Yeah, I would
Agreement?
absolutely agree with that.
Agreed.
okay,
With the way it's funded here, education's funded in Ohio, there should be, ideally, the candidate would have that relationship with the State House, a relationship with the State House. For me, it's somebody who can make the phone call and somebody answers the phone call.
How do you feel about residency? Is there a policy here, or would you insist that your superintendent live in your school district?
I would say yes.
Yes,
Unanimous?
I think that's critical.
Okay.
There are
If
plenty
you're
of
not willing
homes.
to, that's a sign.
Right.
Yeah.
True. And with all the evening activities and weekend activities, it's going to be their advantage anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point, Dave. I think that we have come to the expectation that we need them to be visible
Yes.
in the community. And that really wasn't the case before Dr. Lucas. That,
Wasn't needed, or-
that
okay.
expectation wasn't there.
Okay.
And so now I think our community has become used to seeing somebody at the art show and the music festivals and sporting events and Rotary clubs and
And Dr. Lucas, even though it really, the coffee chats really began with the levy campaign and leading up to May of 11, they've been ongoing, and including Brian, our treasurer, the two of them constantly doing coffee chats, way beyond its initial reason for being. So, as you look at the criteria, understanding our culture here, expectations here, the involvement here. See, and that was, again, that just goes right back to the ad hoc committee, where, I'll just use my example, for instance, I wanted to make sure that, do you know that we have a development committee, and why? And do you trust that there are volunteers bringing forth information that a board and administration would trust? So how do they respond to that?
Okay,
I know there's a lot of districts that don't have such committees.
sure. Let me talk a little bit about the experience level, okay? And everybody's different. And, I will also trust that all of you are open-minded, so everybody brings a different set of pluses and minuses to the table. In terms of the notion of experience, do you see the possibility of hiring anybody here to be your superintendent that is not currently a superintendent? A central office person, an assistant superintendent, something like that? Or do you think the Olentangy superintendent needs to bring years of that experience already?
I think with if they're coming from a larger school district, like a Dublin or a Mason or, it's one of our cohorts in the state, if they're a curriculum director or an assistant superintendent, they probably have the experience level. But
Yeah.
if they're coming from a small school district, I think it depends on the person. I think
Yeah,
they would
that's
have
the-
to have
That's the bottom line.
the superintendent
Yeah,
experience.
if they come from a very small district, just because of the superintendent, might not be the fit,
Right,
even though the title's there.
right, exactly. They may not have ever built a building.
If it's, at least from a larger district, you just need to understand their role.
Right.
And I'll go back to Mr. Kern here. When he was assistant treasurer at Dublin, when we got to understand his role there, it was much, much closer to the treasurer's role than, I'd say, the traditional assistant
Assistant.
treasurer. And that helped certainly give us confidence that he was ready for the role. So I think that's worked out all right.
Thanks.
So far.
Wasn't it he that called you doctor one night?
Yeah,
Somebody called
yeah.
you doctor.
Any other thoughts? About the level of experience?
I guess I would ask that we not slice the bologna too thin, because we may find someone who is I know you're asking us questions to help us narrow candidate fields, but I don't want to get to the point where we have so many caveats that we lose a star that
Okay.
maybe is sitting there that we just don't get a chance to see because that person doesn't make a cut because we've said something to limit ourselves. So it's just mostly a cautionary statement.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess a couple of these I think I'd argue were, say, deal breakers, but
Mhm.
not all. And so
Right.
we
That's
probably need to,
correct.
like residency, I think is a deal breaker. But experience, I think there's a lot of flexibility. To your point.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and you know, we're going to continue to grow for
Yeah.
quite a while, and this person has a big job in front of them.
No, just like Julie made a point about the buildings, I think that's an extremely important point, you know, when you consider growth, managing growth, and that's all the way from your staff and the responsibilities they have to what it takes to pass a levy or a bond, what it takes to get a building built.
Yeah.
And Roger, I appreciate your comment, about the baloney, because you wouldn't be the first district to find the person that you fall in love with be a little bit outside of what you thought your ideal parameters were. But it does help to know generally what the ideal looks like, especially as I talk to candidates.
I agree with you, and I guess I would say, I think that by the time we get to the interview process, we also don't want someone that, because of this relationship, we don't want to hold their hands either. We want to hold their hands to teach them about the district, but we certainly don't want to have to hold their hands to tell them how the job is supposed to go and what they're supposed to do.
Sure, that's not your role as board
It's
members.
not our role,
absolutely.
and so we want that. So that's where that inexperience may be the differentiator when that interview process happens. So.
Good point. Mr. King, you mentioned, you used the word doctor a little bit ago. You were joking with,
Oh, it was
with Brian, but is a doctorate important to you in your district?
I don't know, there's studies out there that are saying now the master's degrees really aren't important for teachers either. It's all how
I know I'll get that question. I've had that question from
Oh, I'm
potential
sure.
candidates.
I'll tell you, at the Career Center, our superintendent does not have her doctorate, and it's because she has been so busy being a superintendent and being a good superintendent.
She is great.
Yeah, and so
I like her a lot.
Yeah, I rank her right up there with everybody else that I've worked with, and she's a great example of not having her superintendent's license. But boy, if she needs to make a call to an elected official,
There
she
you go.
does it. We're now building a building. We've had to deal with growth issues. She has to deal with, all the other districts around to coordinate schedules. I mean, that doesn't take a doctorate. She wouldn't have learned that getting her doctorate's degree. It's on the
Has that
job
been a
training.
factor in other searches with other
It kind of
districts?
depends on the search.
What does that mean?
Well, I'll give you an example. Recently, we did the search in Bowling Green.
Mm-hmm.
That district is very closely linked with the university,
Mhm.
and there were a few board members that felt like the superintendent needed to have a doctorate in that community for credibility with that university community. On the other hand, there were two other board members that said, just like you did, I don't want to just say that, I don't want to tell people they shouldn't apply because they don't have a doctorate. They ended up hiring somebody that does not have a doctorate, and everybody was thrilled with him. So I was able to tell candidates, I think the board would love if you had a doctorate, but they're certainly going to look at all candidates. So in some districts, I will say it makes less and less of a difference now than I think it did 10 years ago. I think experience tends to weigh heavier, as probably it should, and the decisions that you've made and what you bring to the table and your track record and that kind of thing. But there are some districts, and, you know, Dr. Lucas obviously has a doctorate, and so just based on your previous history, I wanted to ask the question.
It's a good question. I guess I'd ask the more experienced board members, given all that Dr. Lucas has done, if he wasn't Dr. Lucas, would he have gotten any less or been any less effective than he has been? You know, I'm asking you to put on polish up the crystal ball on that, but
See,
did that open doors?
Yeah, for me, it gives me more confidence in the candidate on the academic side, where my background isn't education, it's
Okay.
business and finance.
That's a
So
great
knowing
point.
that,
I mean, that's,
the candidate has the doctorate gives me more confidence.
But-
Now, I'm kind of more where you were. Great to have. I don't think it's a must-have.
Yeah, and Dr. Lucas did his dissertation on paying students for their academic progress because they had a project in Coshocton. I don't know if that would have worked here in Olentangy.
sounds like he's going to be working for the NCAA or something.
You know, so.
I haven't had a sense that Dr. Lucas having that degree was of consequence with his ability to do his job. I agree with your statement about academia, though. But I would say it's not necessary. I'm more interested in the person.
Yeah, because I think it's his drive and personality that was
Yes.
a differentiator, not his doctorate.
Right.
Demeanor and his
The relationships.
temperament, and I mean, you pick the descriptor you want there. You could use about a dozen of them. I mean, I know that I'd be called a cheerleader if you know who was sitting here, but
Right.
it is what it is.
Well, you can just see the strong relationships that have been built.
And that's, yeah.
And it's not because, in my opinion, it's not because of the degree. It's because Dr. Lucas has worked hard at it and has the personality to make it work.
So if you ask board members or community members, why do you think Dr. Lucas was successful here? They might list a lot of qualities, and the doctorate might be mentioned, but certainly wouldn't be on the top of most people's list, probably.
I bet you it wouldn't make your top 10.
I agree. Yeah.
I don't even think they would even.
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
And this is a highly educated
Community.
community.
Absolutely.
And I, you know, when you couple that with that statement, I think that tells you something right there.
Okay. Now, if we talked a little bit about when candidates come to me and they say, you know, if I ask the board, what are the first 3 things they're going to want me to focus on? Or is there a trend I need to pay quick attention to in Olentangy? You know, what are some of the things you would tell me that you would want them to be proficient at quickly or immediately?
They have to continue our academic excellence. That's
Yeah.
above all for me. I mean, that would be mine. They have to embrace that and live that and breathe that and help us move that forward.
Yeah. Same thing, maybe said a different way. It's being able to develop and articulate a vision for the district. Here's the academic path forward. Here's the financial path forward. You do that in a very clear and concise way.
The curveball that always gets thrown in, though, that makes us different is dealing with growth.
That's part of this.
So I guess academics, financials, and growth would be, if you had to list 3 top areas.
And they all reinforce the other.
And that's the mirror image of most of the questions that come in every day.
Yeah.
I mean, so I just read our mission statements, right?
It's a little bit.
Yes, I have.
There are probably different situations in different districts, right? So it's not a turnaround story.
Right.
It's not a
Correct.
district that's got significant challenges, or
That presents
there's also
challenges to
not a
candidates for
caretaker
sure, though.
story either, that someone can just step in and ride it out. It's a
Mhm.
job that takes a lot of commitment and passion and time.
Okay. Are there plans to be on the ballot anytime in the next 2 years? That you've
Brian?
even sort of
No.
had conversations about? No.
Our treasurer can handle that question.
Okay.
Part of
Hey,
it,
put that in the Delaware Gazette. There are no plans to be on the ballot in the
Picking
next
on
2
our
years.
one audience member that doesn't work here.
Tom had to leave.
That doesn't work here, I said.
I mean, to Dr. Lucas's credit, that's part of the
The legacy.
benefit of the timing of you can get a new superintendent in here and give him or her some significant runway to establish themselves before they have to lead a levy campaign, which I think is a significant opportunity.
And just to
candidate.
clarify, Brian, that's based on today's assumptions, not taking into consideration anything that could be passed by the General Assembly by June 30th, correct?
You are correct. As of right now, if the candidate wants to know, of course, we'll be approving, Cheryl too, which would be helpful too, I think, for a candidate. We'll be approving we'll have the first reading of the forecast Thursday. And then approval on was the Thursday the 14th. So we'll have a good time, and of course we'll have it up on the website and everything right away. But right now we have a positive fund balance through 2018, about a month's worth of positive balance at that point. So I suppose the earliest you would potentially look would be 2017, but other factors, not including the state budget, could, of course, extend that out.
So to your
Cost
point,
savings,
yeah.
cost reductions.
Step in and grab what we've got going and continue with it. We don't need a manager, we need a driver.
Yeah.
And this could be a little bit my assumption, but I think in a district as large as Olentangy, for some districts, I guess I'll explain this and then you'll know what the question I'm asking. For some districts, the staff is small enough, the student base is small enough that any kind of a trend can become a big deal. So if you have 150 staff members in your district and 12 of them are going to retire next year and represents 10% of your workforce, the turnover becomes a big trend a superintendent would need to pay attention to. And I guess I'm assuming that in a district as large as Olentangy, many of those things kind of, I guess the waves kind of balance out. There's no big curl. But that's the question I'm asking. Is there anything in terms of staff turnover or special education or gifted education changes or some major change in your extracurricular philosophy and policy that that you can think of that I would want to mention to candidates right now?
I think the only staff wave is this year with the new retirement rules, so there's going to be a slightly higher number of people are going to take advantage of that.
And at this
but
point,
it's not
we
gonna
just,
be
Gail just
significant.
updated us, it's not that
It's not
much
significant,
difference
right? It's just-
from last year, so we're not.
So I don't think that's
Nothing
an
crazy,
issue.
nothing out of norm. You don't see any of your diversity groups, any of your subgroups growing at a drastically larger or shrinking at a drastically larger rate than any other?
No, but I would say maybe the talent development area, there's probably an opportunity there. Again, given the context of we've got a high-performing district that we want to maintain and continue to improve the high level we have, making sure that this individual can identify and develop top talent is important. And he's
Good.
going to be a leader of leaders, not a doer.
Right.
And he's going to have to be able to find good building leaders to drive excellence through every building.
Great.
Especially with the diversity of programs like STEM, OASIS, PBLs, et cetera. You know, it's complex and it's diverse and all points to the mission.
As efficiently as possible, right, Dave?
As
For
efficient.
cost.
Yes, as efficiently as
Efficient
possible.
being a euphemism for cheap? As cheaply as possible?
Frugal.
Frugally as possible. I can appreciate that. Okay. Anything else? If I'm sitting down and talking with a potential candidate that you would want them to know?
We expect, and Dave touched on this a little bit, we expect volunteer involvement. So if they don't like working with committees,
Oh, right, and access to the, yeah. That's fair.
this isn't a place for them, because we like to get our, we have a diversity committee, a communications committee, now a student boundaries or attendance committee, whatever we're calling it, that are directly linked to the superintendent, and then the board, and there are a lot of those types of committees.
Okay.
The board has the development committee, the school advocacy committee,
Policy.
the policy committee, or the facilities committee, I should say.
Yeah. Did you say finance and audit?
In the finance and audit committee, you know, so because we have a lot of people with good experience and backgrounds, we tap into their potential. And
Sure.
they have to be willing to listen to, we don't have them make, you know, earth-shattering decisions, but we certainly do take their recommendations strongly.
And that doesn't mean that the superintendent attends all those meetings? For
No.
instance, Brian goes to the finance and audit committees, obviously. It's being aware of them and understanding agreeing that there's an importance.
But our community expects to be involved.
Right, and has the involvement when necessary, appropriate, when it's appropriate.
Good, that's a great and unique thing to talk about with candidates.
And so maybe a question for you in terms of awareness of candidates. How should we think about Arrowhead situation?
Pardon me?
The Arrowhead situation.
Oh,
And their ability, to the extent that that drags on past August, you know, their awareness of that issue and how they may get run in to finish that.
I think, again, the size of your district helps you there.
Mm.
Obviously, it's a very difficult issue. I think a potential superintendent candidate would want to know about his or her potential involvement legally as things drag on. I would think that would be the basis. I don't think there's any superintendent worth his or her salt that you would want to hire that would not consider applying because of that situation. But certainly it will be something that candidates will want to know more about and certainly stay on top of. So I worked with a district a couple years ago that had a facility issue that resulted in a very large suit of a contractor over their HVAC, and the new superintendent kind of was hired right in the middle of a lot of that arbitration and mediation and that kind of thing. So he had to be a quick study on what had been years of, you know, ongoing debate. So not the same thing exactly, but a similar type of situation. You'll have to, I'm sure your board council will want to work with whoever is your new superintendent on what's going on there. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, we talked a little bit about focus groups. So if we could talk a little bit more, just off the top of your head, if I asked you what are the groups that Cheryl should meet with regarding the search, how would you kind of split them out?
Administration.
And by that, we would talk about principals and central office staff?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, department heads and a sampling of principals. Maybe too many to do them all.
Okay.
Say support organizations, and then you kind of chop them up into PTOs, boosters.
Well, to stay with the staff, I would do the administrative group and then certified group and
yeah,
non-certified.
Yeah. Almost like the bargaining units.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the support organizations, kind of PTOs, boosters,
Music, arts.
music arts.
Olentangy Education Foundation.
Oh, yeah, for OFK.
Yeah, Olentangy for Kids.
As part of the support organizations or different?
Yeah, because they're not for profit, run separately, I believe. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not a direct affiliation. They're a
No, they don't have a
so-
direct legal association with the school district, but they're supportive of the school district.
Okay.
So they could attend the same meeting as your boosters, PTOs,
Sure,
all that kind of thing, okay?
And Terry Niehaus would have a complete list of all the committees, because there
Yeah.
are a lot of committees that Dr. Lucas has that I,
Yeah,
no.
superintendent committees.
So
Yeah.
one for committees?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that can be superintendent and board
Yeah, do
committees.
the committees together.
Together.
Okay.
Support groups together, staff,
Yeah.
employees. Be interesting if you could get, well, I don't know if it makes sense, your legislative partners. I don't-
Well, I was gonna say, if we get some people from our business advisory
I was
council,
gonna mention the BAC, yeah.
and that's a superintendent committee, and they have a lot of people who have ties to elected officials. And Andy Brenner's on that committee. I mean, he could certainly be part of the.
And the superintendent of the
focus
Career
group.
Center is on the Business
Yeah.
Advisory Council.
Get Senator Jordan to come.
Okay, and then what I always call an all-call, community all-call?
Yes.
Is that, are you in favor of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Our community will expect it.
All right. Any others we're missing?
Wait, I just have a question on how you do that. Do you do that in like a classroom or a theater, or where do you do that?
Oftentimes it's an auditorium.
Okay.
It can be a cafetorium,
Right.
cafeteria. I've done them in gyms before.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of depends on the number of people. And I'm happy to move around. So if it's easier for staff and community members to meet, you know, your district's so big. So if,
I know, that's what
I can move around. Oftentimes they're in the same room all day long, and so people know where to go. But we can just kind of work on that depending on how the groups get, how the timing works out. And should I work with Brian or should I work with Terry? I think I've talked to a couple times.
One of us, probably
Yeah.
Terry.
Yeah.
Terry has
Terry's the
the-
one who would actually do the
Yeah.
physical,
Yeah,
logistical.
reserving of the rooms and.
Right.
Okay.
But I'd certainly keep Brian informed.
I'll copy you both on emails and we'll get it done.
Sounds good.
Even though this building is considered central, it's good to have some events on one side of the river.
Sure.
and
You're
some
gonna
on
have
the
to
other.
Absolutely.
work between the schools.
Okay.
Did you mention PTOs when you were going through the?
Yeah.
She did.
Yep.
And we've got our autism folks and make sure they get invited.
Oh, yeah.
The Olentangy Dyslexia.
Dyslexia group, right?
Do you consider
That's
that
part
one
of
your
our boost.
support
That's one of our support
organizations?
organizations
Yeah.
anyway. So
Brian has a whole list
I just
of
wanna make sure everybody gets the
organizations
invite,
that we approve, and they're on, so Brian, if you could get her that list that we approve in January of,
Okay.
And that probably has all the main contacts then as well, all the presidents and designated.
yeah, typically a lot of them, like for the PTOs, we have the building. They have their own mailbox at the
Okay.
building and stuff. Typically, Jeff works with them too, so I'll work with Jeff on that because we do that because we have to have the liability coverage for those
That's
groups.
right.
And if I can directly email, I'm happy to do that. If it makes more sense for you to push it out to a listserv, I mean, we can just talk about
Yeah,
which
that's
group. Okay, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about internal candidates on a couple fronts. One, whether or not I should expect one or more internal candidates, whether you expect one or more internal candidates. If you do, my expectation is that they will apply and be treated like every other candidate, that we're not doing a separate process for internal candidates that we would do for any other candidate.
That's correct.
So correct me if I'm wrong.
Must be the same.
And then, I'm planning on you being successful in hiring somebody the end of June. If that person isn't available August 1st, the end of July, do you have a plan right now to name an interim, or will Dr. Lucas stay until somebody is physically here, or have you talked about that, or what?
We have not talked about that.
Okay.
let me ask you, were you involved in the Gehanna search? What's OSBA? Because I noticed they named an interim
They
superintendent.
named an interim because they felt the board was not like-minded on whether to do a search at this point or not.
Oh,
So since they couldn't agree on that, they decided to name an interim, and they're
Okay.
going to launch a search in the fall for the following year.
okay.
Yeah, I would assume if we get to a point that we didn't think we'd have somebody to open next year, we would either name an interim, and that could be either an existing employee or engaging Dr. Lucas on some sort of interim basis.
He is here through August 31st. So
So that August 31st date doesn't include several weeks of vacation he's earned or anything like that? You expect him?
I don't know what he's gonna do.
Okay.
Is-
I just would encourage you to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And if I can help facilitate, a plan B, if there is a gap, then I'm happy to do that. But obviously you need a superintendent of record, and
with the last search, when we didn't come to a decision the first time around, we were getting close to not having anyone certified in the district that could do this.
Was April interim?
Because
No, Jeff Brown?
April was, and Jeff Brown, but then Jeff Brown left to go to Granville.
Yep.
And April was leaving to go to Battelle.
Yeah.
Or not April, April had already left. April left, it was Jen Huey.
Yeah, that's who, yeah.
It was Jen Huey. And she was going to Battelle. So, you know, you have to have someone with a superintendent's license. And so I'm glad you brought that up because we were getting into a pickle with our timing.
Small districts who don't have a certified staff person will often use their career center to be their career center superintendent to be superintendent of record. But again, your career center is large, your district is large. It would be really hard for that person to do both.
Do we have anyone on staff that's certified?
Jack?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, they're always sitting here in the meeting,
So
so.
easy to get? Can I go get one?
You know, you've got a lot of people
Because
working towards
we
that.
were,
They're
we
probably
didn't,
training
we were
towards
running
that.
out the last time.
We just finished a cohort with Ashland too amongst about 9 of our principals. In addition
Oh,
to
sure.
people central office.
Okay.
Okay, so because Dr. Lucas isn't planning on retiring until August 31st, do you still want, if you can, hire somebody effective the end of July or the 1st of August? Do you
Yeah.
want?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
the thought was
Them
they
to-
would
Yeah,
work
let's contemplate
together.
Want them
Okay.
to work together.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I mean, I think that's a right-sized transition period.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a transition, not a training.
All right.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, I think we're ready to talk a little bit about your brochure. I have included a draft. I referred to the treasurer brochure that was done a couple of years ago slightly, made quite a bit of changes. And, you know, it's in decent shape, I think. Certainly I'll want your edits and changes. I can get this to you all electronically so that you can send me any of your edits. And I'm happy to do that. I would love to have a couple of recent pictures. So I'm sure you have many that are available. Communications person.
Yeah,
Devin.
get with Devin.
We'll
Devin,
get Devin in touch with you.
can I have that name?
Devin Immelt,
Devin?
O-N.
O-N.
Immelt.
Okay,
He's in our communications department.
perfect. Okay, I'll email him.
One thing I just thought of to tell potential candidates, and Devin came to mind, we are currently in the midst of hiring several top positions too. Like they put out for the communications person.
Communications, student
Um,
services.
Yeah, the,
Chris
what
Andres.
was Chris Andres's title?
Pupil services.
Pupil
Services Director. We have several
We will have principal
principal
opportunities.
openings. So we have some key positions that are,
In process.
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that, I just thought of that.
That's good. So I have done this Word document here that talks a little bit about your district. And certainly the community. Qualifications we'll talk about at the end because I need that from you. The financial information is the old stuff. I emailed you the current form.
Yeah, this afternoon, yeah.
Yeah, this
We'll
afternoon.
get taken care of right away.
Yeah, so that obviously has not been changed, it will need to be changed. And I referred to the OSBA database for your years of service as board members. Sometimes we're off by a year or so, but I hope yours are accurate. If they're not, certainly let me know.
Looks good.
I adjusted the timeline to the dates we've talked about tonight. So I will get this all to you electronically unless there's something that you want to talk about now, and we can go right to the qualification bullets. Yep. Does that work?
Okay.
So at the back of your packet, the last thing I've included is this leadership profile. And it really helps me to get an idea of what is critical to you as individual people. So there are 66, I think, bullet points there. And what I would love is for you to go through and give it a read. and check off the 8 or 10 that strike you individually as being most important. These are most personal and leadership characteristics for a superintendent. And we found in asking superintendent candidates, did you look at the brochure? Yes. And what pulled you to the position, to applying for the position? And they will always tell us the leadership bullets. So they know that they're different for every search and that they're prioritized by boards. So it seems like a simple thing, but it will really make a difference in terms of the answering the fit question. So if you could take a few minutes to do that, I would really appreciate it.
This is a time test.
It's a speed reading exam. You'll want to check 20, but don't. Everybody ready?
Ready.
Close?
How did you do it? Like 6
Okay,
minutes?
what I would like to do is I'm just gonna read the numbers fairly quickly. If that's one you circled, please say yes. And then I circle the ones where I hear a majority of yeses, okay? All right, starting 1, 2, 3.
Yes, on 2.
Yes on 1.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
5.
Yes.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yes.
11.
Yes.
12,
Yes.
13, 14, 15.
Yes.
16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Yes.
21, 22.
Yes.
23.
Yes.
24, 25, 26.
Yes.
27.
Yes.
Yes.
28, 29, 30.
Yes.
31, 32.
Yes.
33, 34, 35, 36, 37.
Yes.
38, 39, 40.
Yes.
41.
Yes.
42, 43.
I had 42. so.
Okay.
Playing
43,
catch
44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57.
Yes.
58, 59, 60, 61?
Yes.
62? 63? 64?
Yes.
65?
Yes.
66. Okay, so the ones where I heard a bunch, 11, which is about accountability and standards, good. 27 speaks to finance. 30 speaks to board relations. 32, personal characteristics. 41, ability to manage an administrator effectively, administrate. 57, public education advocate. 61, being highly visible and accountable and accessible. And 65, somebody who is a visionary and is a good implementer.
Mm-hmm.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Plus, I made a lot of check marks on ones that one or two of you mentioned, so I'll fill in with those. So I will put those in the brochure and see how that flies.
That's a good exercise, actually.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to put my pencil down before I was through, but not that I'm fine with the ones that came out. But what I noticed as I was going through it, I was paying attention to, I think a lot of these are really subsets of other ones. And I'll give you an example. Number 12, be active in the community. I saw it being very similar to 61, active and contributing member of the school community and be comfortable with high visibility and accessibility. Now, I know that says school community, but I see them as being very similar in their concept.
I agree. And normally, if a board, if there are 3 on here that are all about communication, for example, I know
Right.
that's a critical issue for that board. What I really like is to have it happen a little bit like this happened, in that you've kind of covered all the bases.
Oh, sure, sure.
But I totally agree with you, and some of them are quite similar.
Was this developed by a psychologist?
You know what? I don't know that. I won't say yes or no.
I'm not going to tell you this. So where do we go? It's one.
So,
you pick
I will
one.
insert those into the draft and get you the draft. I will speak with Devin about pictures. And as soon as possible, what I'll do is send you the electronic version. If you all can turn that around to me quickly, or at least let me know you don't have any suggestions, then we can get you a PDF version. As soon as we approve a PDF version, we can go to print.
I would just ask one thing I noticed right away that just as a pet peeve of mine is when we say his or hers, can we just say the successful candidate? Can we
Okay.
just I would just,
Right.
because I
His
don't know,
slash
let's just keep it on an even platform.
Okay.
I don't know, for me, that's always been a pet peeve, but.
You don't like his and her? His or
No, I
hers?
don't. I think it's a successful candidate. We should not be even considering or have any implication of gender at all, to be honest with you.
Okay, I agree. Happy to do that. All right, so I think we are at the end of my agenda. The last thing I wanted to mention is just communication. I'm happy to work with the media. I look forward to working with the media if they have questions about the search. Or if anybody else contacts you about the search, I hope you'll point them to me. I'd like to be your spokesperson for the search, for the duration of the search. If I need a quote from you, or if one of you is the only person that can answer a question somebody's got, I'll certainly contact Kevin. And unless it's you're not in agreement, and I do need to email, I'll try and copy everybody, because I'd like you all to be on the same page. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Any other questions?
I just might suggest that, right as looking at your, what you title it, the profile. Dr. Lucas did a succession plan where he went through, from his opinion, of categories of skill level concentration. You might get a copy of that.
I would love to see that, yeah.
He did a nice job of breaking it down into 6 categories, like under miscellaneous ethics, just one example.
Okay,
So I'd mention it.
I'll contact you for that.
Mentions coffee chats. There you go. It's on his
Anything
list.
else? Great, thank you so much.
Sure, appreciate
All right,
it.
appreciate your time. Look forward to it.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion?
we do have another board meeting
Thursday,
Thursday.
Thursday.
6 o'clock here.
No, at Olentangy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you.
6:30, isn't it?
Is it 6:30?
I think it's 6:30 because it's awards night, isn't it?
But I thought it
Well, it's
started
still
at 6, and then the
6.
board meeting starts at 6:30.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Looking real quick, hold on.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I will.
6 o'clock, we'll start in the Olentangy High School Theater. Once that is done,
Apologies to the rest of my esteemed colleagues.
Then we'll move to the library for the business portion of the meeting.
Yes, you would. We defined it.
So we don't have to do the business meeting up on the stage?
No, we're going to move the library.
Oh, I see. So we'll do all that and then move to room, do the meeting.
Yes,
Good.
to the business part of the meeting.
Yeah, that's good.
There is what do I want to say, in between there?
Oh, like a recess or a break?
Executive session.
Executive session, thank you.
Oh, okay, that's right, that's
Yes.
right, that's right.
And I think we're still having an executive session.
Yes.
For personnel, because we have to take action on it. So it'll be a quick executive session and then into the meeting.
Yep. All right, with that, please call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
11.
Thanks for
done.
coming.
Yes, thank you.